Snooker podcast on BBC. Shabnam, great to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
And yourself. Nice to be on.
So the English Open is progressing in Brentford. Ronnie O'Sullivan survived a first-round scare today against an 18-year-old, Ben Mertens, who looks very promising. But one suspects the topic of conversation centres around one topic just now. The spectre of match fixing hangs over the sport in a big way. You might start for a moment, Shabnam, by telling us Yan Bingtao, world number 16, a high-profile player.
Yes, I think it's caused quite a bit of shock hearing that Yan Bingtao is the latest player to be suspended by the WPBSA as part of this ongoing investigation into allegations of what they call manipulating the outcome of matches for betting purposes, which is basically match fixing. And Yan Bingtao, world number 16, 22 years of age, a former Masters champion, one of the brightest prospects in snooker around, is the 7th player to have been suspended now, and this follows the suspension of 5 players just last week. 5 Chinese players, and that followed the suspension of a player called Liang Wenbo, a former world number 11, back in October. So all these players are part of this ongoing investigation at the moment, but I think because of the profile of Yan Bingtao, that's why I think the story has really come under the spotlight now. Yan Bingtao, he is one. You know, he is spearheading a generation of Chinese players currently at the moment who are said to be the future of the sport. So this news comes as quite a disappointment to mainly China, really, who follow these players, hold them in such high regard. And of course, at the moment, these are just allegations, and all these players have the right to appeal. But as you say, this has somewhat dampened the tournament that's currently on at the moment as well, and it's casting a bit of a shadow over the sport in general. The latest on Yan Bingtao is that he's being given 14 days to appeal. He was supposed to be playing in the English Open. Of course, he hasn't been able to do that because he's under this suspension now for the time being. I said he's a Masters champion in the Masters tournament, which is one of the big 3. The Triple Crown events takes place next month in January, and it's looking unlikely that Yan Bingtao will take part in that at the moment. Of course, he's got this right to appeal, but at the moment, there's going to be another player taking his place at the Masters. It's still sinking in, this news.
He was the youngest Masters champion in 26 years. He beat John Higgins in the final, which people may remember. And there was an air of drama to proceedings yesterday when he arrived to play his opening round match, and he was interviewed on arrival by snooker authorities, and it was on the basis of that conversation that they made the decision to suspend him until this investigation concludes. So Jason Ferguson was talking. He's of the WPBSA, and he said yesterday, unfortunately this morning, there was a strong decision to suspend Yan Bingtao as a result of new evidence which came to light in an ongoing inquiry which started in October with the suspension of Liang Wenbo, and that was how this all unfolded yesterday. The profile of the other 5 Chinese players who were suspended most recently, what stature are they of, Shabnam?
Well, the highest ranking player out of them was Lu Ning, the world number 41, and the others aren't really household names. Outside of China, I was looking at them actually, and just looking at their ages, and they're all mostly quite young players. You've got Chang Bingyu, 20 years of age, Bai Langning, 20 years of age as well. Zhao Zhanbo, 19 years of age. The oldest of them is Li Hang, who is 32. So they're not players that you may have heard of at the moment. They're all sort of in the world in the top 100 in the world. They're all players that are sort of making their way in the sport, and part of that pool of talent that's coming from China that I mentioned. The future of the sport. So yeah, this is why it feels a bit of a worrying time at the moment, and the fact that it's such a big group of them as well, who all know each other, who are under investigation at the moment. So yeah, Yan Bingtao is the most high profile out of all of them. And, as soon as you heard his name and the involvement, this became quite a bigger story and of more concern, really. So yeah, as I said, allegations at the moment, we have no idea how serious it's going to be.
Yeah.
What kind of effect this could have on the careers of all these young men, bright young talents as they are. Snooker has had cases of match fixing in the past, and players have served bans. They've come back and carried on with their careers, but it's so difficult to say, how it affects certain players. Some have said that, it was the lowest point of their life when they went off and had a ban, and it's very difficult to come back from. But, we'll have to wait and see what the outcome of this investigation is for these young players and what happens in their future. As I say, it's just caused ripples, and over in China, because snooker is such a massive sport out there, they absolutely love it. Kids are playing it in schools, etc. There'll be a real feeling of dread there about what's going on, and real worry. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with this investigation.
And we are in the early stages, certainly publicly, of our understanding of what's been happening here. But it does seem as if there are a range of offences. Some players perhaps betting on themselves to win, allegedly. Others maybe simply not blowing the whistle on an approach which was made to them. And then other more serious offences alleged. And again, I'm not talking about any specific players here, but I've seen that point made that there are a range of offences potentially. Do we know much more than that?
We actually don't know exactly what the players are being accused of at the moment. It's a very difficult thing to investigate, and always has been in snooker match fixing. As you say, there's such a range, isn't there, of allegations and claims and things that people can get wrong. I mean, there have been players in the past who have been involved and just not mentioned the approach, and that's got them punished for that. And there have been players who have been very heavily involved and known what they were doing. A big case was Stephen Lee, sort of in the last decade, or just over the last couple of decades, and he was banned for 12 years for a load of offences. His ban actually ends in 2024. So you've got that case, and you've got somebody like Jamie Jones from Wales in the last couple of years, who was basically, he just didn't report an approach, and he was given a 6-month ban,
right.
Which he found very difficult to serve, and something that a player will really regret. And in fact, a colleague of mine, as soon as this news came out, just asked me, how do you actually discover that how do you find out that this is going on, or how do you suspect anything like this? And I said, I think the main way that you do find out is a player coming to the WPBSA and reporting wrongdoing. And often that's how this comes out, and then it gets investigated further, and you find out that other people are involved and all sorts of things. And it feels like that's what's happened in this case, really. And there is a worry that, what else is going to come out here? You've got 7 players suspended now, but this feels like a huge investigation, one of the biggest carried out by the WPBSA, the governing body. And that there is this sort of feeling, people have called it a dark day, but it could be more than that. There could be more people involved. We hope there isn't, but you don't know. I mean, the WPBSA would say, actually, trying to look at it in a positive light if you can. They are doing all they can to crack down on this sort of thing. And the fact that this is coming to light means that they're doing their job effectively, and they're able to crack down harder than they ever have done on players. They've said, Jason Ferguson has said, you will not get away with this.
Yes.
To players now. He's warned them. So yeah, it's a really difficult and quite a murky situation, which we just have to hope that the powers to be are doing their job, and some of the players have said all they want to see is the sport clean, and that's all everybody wants who is involved in this sport.
Yes, because I saw Jason Ferguson as well make the point yesterday that the markets are so indicative of something untoward, and they are monitoring those markets very closely. And it does strike any of us watching the sport, really, that were it not for the markets and were it not for people coming forward as whistleblowers, this would be so, so difficult to spot. I think in other sports, I mean, there have been cases of football match fixing where people watching the game have felt that something strange was happening. Whereas snooker, because of the nature of the sport, the precision required, millimeters can lose a frame. To the naked eye, it is just so difficult to spot. And that even struck me watching a Eurosport discussion, the punditry discussion yesterday, where the point was made by several of the guests, including Jimmy White, that anytime they've watched Yan Bingtao, you know, he tries his heart out on the table. And he may well, I don't know. But it did strike me as well that to the naked eye, that is very, very difficult to spot with snooker.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's one of the most difficult things about it. I mean, it's such a mental sport as well, and you've no idea what's going through a player's mind when he gets down on a shot. And when you're watching it, you've no idea why a player has missed that shot. You know, has he done it on purpose? He or she done it on purpose, or was it just a miscalculation? Was it not paying attention, just a quick reflex? You've absolutely no idea
And
as a viewer.
they're so talented. They're good enough to miss by the smallest margin.
Absolutely, absolutely. You see the players out there completely clearing up, without a moment's thought. Some of the top professionals, but then you see, some of these players who are on that top level. You expect them to miss, and you don't expect them to win loads of matches, so really you won't notice if these players are missing here and there and all that sort of thing. It's a really, really difficult thing to catch, and that's why historically in snooker there's been lots of investigations into allegations, but only a handful of players really have actually been punished, prosecuted, found guilty of such things, because it is such a difficult thing to actually prove.
I don't know, have the players said much across the last 24 hours at Brentford generally? Has there been a sense of outrage? Have players tended to kick to touch and try and say as little as possible? What's been the general refrain from those asked?
Well, it's a difficult subject to talk about, because obviously these are just allegations, and no charges have been brought yet. So the players obviously at the English Open, press and media have access to them, so they've been asking them questions there, and a few of them have given some comments on them. Judd Trump is one of the players who was asked about it, and he talked about how he was worried about how these young players were being looked after. Again, if it is the case that they have been involved and they are found guilty of wrongdoing, he said he was worried about the fact that, these young players who are coming out of China and coming to this country, to the UK, going around playing, they're on their own. They haven't got a lot of people around them to look after them. It's always a difficult sport, because you're traveling to different places, you're staying in hotel rooms on your own, you're on your own quite a lot. And I suppose it's probably easy to to be influenced, or to get into a group of people, or it's harder, isn't it, on your own to make decisions, etc. So Judd Trump was talking about that. You had Neil Robertson, who is the defending champion at the moment at the English Open, and Robertson's always a player who has quite a lot to say about the game. He's a bit of a thinker, and again, the comments he made were that he just wants this game to be clean. He wants the authorities to do the right job. He wants them to investigate this properly. Marco Fu, player from Hong Kong. He tweeted that he is just devastated. It was just one sentence. He just said, "I'm devastated by what I'm hearing." So yeah, I think that's the sort of consensus between the players. They can't obviously make many more comments than that, but they are, they are feeling unhappy that this has happened, especially when a tournament is currently on. It always, any sport, when you hear these sort of allegations against it, it's always a feeling of negativity around it, even if it goes on to be proved that this something hasn't happened or whatever. There's always that feeling of negativity surrounding it, and you just don't want to see it.
No, no. Well,
That's how.
there are certain sports which just have a bad reputation for different issues, be it match fixing or doping. And I would think it's fair to say, again, not talking about the specifics of this case, but just because of this general story popping up generally with snooker over the years, that it does have this reputation. There are raised eyebrows generally with the sport. And it was funny when this issue arose in tennis in recent years as well, and there was one instance of quite a high profile player who was never named, but there was an alleged offence, and the point was made, well, financially this player didn't need to do it, but the point was made that they got this player when he or she was young, and so once you just convince a young person, vulnerable person, to do it once, then there is forevermore the threat of revealing the fact they've match fixed, and you have them into the future. So again, it's such a nefarious activity and can really ruin lives, not to put too fine a point on it. So you wish them well in trying to stamp it out, but very, very difficult when there's money to be made.
Yeah, it's a good point actually when you talk about finance and money being made in snooker, because it's actually a very difficult sport to make lots of money in when you're especially starting out.
Yeah.
And when you're outside of the top 16 or the top 32, when you're a lower ranked player. There are these journeyman players, they call them, with all respect, who have been playing snooker for all their lives, but may have another job on the side because you can't make a lot of money if you're not winning matches and going deeper in tournaments. So some of the younger players, it will be difficult for them, especially coming from a different country and having to pay for travel expenses and hotels, and all that costs a lot of money before you even got to a venue and played a match and earned some money from it. The World Snooker Tour did announce some minimum earnings this year for players of £20,000. And part of the reason for that was, after the pandemic, it was a way for quite a lot of these players on the tour who are struggling to just get by, to make sure that they have this, this minimum £20,000 pot to get, keep them going. And if you think about it, that isn't a lot of money either. No. for a season or a year's work, but it's something. It's more than there was before. So yeah, it's a difficult sport to make money in, and that could be one of the reasons why players could be tempted into doing something like this. Yeah.
Well, listen, throw one frame, victimless crime, then go and try and win the match. And you can just see how these things happen. So, well, look, we'll watch with interest. Again, these are just allegations at the moment. 7 players currently suspended, and there's an ongoing investigation. And the news yesterday, Yan Bingtao, world number 16, the most high profile, certainly caught the eye of people. Shabnam, thank you so much for your time. It's much appreciated. We might chat to you at the conclusion of the investigation and see where the sport is and how widespread this is.
No, it's been good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shabnam Younus-Jewell there, broadcaster with BBC. She hosts the Framed Snooker podcast as well. Take a break.